speed because of the wind all day. So, this is Tony Cook. He is a rare thing in BMX these days. He's a rider, and he also fabricates his own frames.
Yes, that's correct.
And that's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's start off. Talk a little bit about maybe first your background in cycling, and then your background in machining.
So I started out cycling when I was a kid. I was a BMX racer, in my childhood, and I grew up in a race car shop. My family built sprint cars, and in high school, everybody had to do a graduation project, so I thought it would be really cool to build my own frame. And I went to my uncle's shop for help, and I asked them, how do we do this? And they're like, excellent, we're totally about that. That's a great project, we'll help you. And a friend of theirs showed me how to use CAD and how to draw a frame and like what geometry was and how to, figure all the basics out. And then my uncle showed me the mechanical aspect of it, of, notching tubing and making a fixture for your bike to go in. And it all comes down to clean joints, and everything has to be perfect. It's not one thing that makes a good bike, it's every little thing kind of put together.
Right on.
So, yeah, so I took a long break. I raced until I was probably 18 or 19, and just kind of gave it up to go to college, and finally got married, and all that stuff kind of went off to the wayside. So in 2018, I was at a music festival. I was riding one of my original bikes that I made when I was a kid, and a photographer saw me, and we stopped to bullshit a little bit, and he really liked my bike, and he asked me about it and thought it was super cool, and was like, hey, where did you get that? And I said, I made it. He was like, oh, what do you mean you made it? Like, you put it together? And I was like, no, I designed it, fabricated it, and it's one of a kind. It's my bike. He was like, wow, that's really crazy. Did you, what do you do for a living? And I said, I'm a mechanic at a greenhouse. And he said, you don't sound very enthusiastic. Are you happy? And I said, no, not really. And he's like, dude, you're an artist. Quit your job. Build bikes. That's so cool. Like, that doesn't happen every day. And I went home really charged up from that. And I just needed to figure it out at that point. I'm like, wow, why did I stop? It made me ask myself so many questions of how much farther along would I have been if I stayed on that path. But whatever, life happens. Here we are. The first bike I built was the DJ right there. I raced it. I took it back to the track, started getting actively back into racing again, because I figured that was the only way I could really promote my brand, was to be the guy on it.
Right.
And was like, man, I really missed this. Whatever happened? It's like the same good family feeling. Like, everybody still cares, they like you, they want to talk to you. So why not be back immersed in this lifestyle again? And that was it. That was the switch back to BMX again. And 2019 is when I put my first batch of frames out. 2020 got a little bigger, and 2021 was really like a breakthrough year for me this year, and I'll be at over 50 frames just this year.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the frame. One of the biggest decisions when making any type of bike, geometry.
Yeah.
Talk about where the inspiration for the geometry for these frames came from.
So everything is off the top of my head. It was nothing that I copied anybody else's bikes. I didn't want to do that. I kind of wanted to go into it and have a fresh slate, start with my own blank slate, and really come up with my own geometry of what I thought felt good. I didn't know what to build when I first got back into it, so I reached out to a really good friend of mine who I used to race with back in the day, and he still works in the bike shop.
Oh, cool.
And I said, Dave, I want to build frames again. I want you to have one of the first ones. And he goes, no, I want the first one. So I'm like, all right, well, I don't know what to come back into this and make. So he said, check out Transition. Look at a PBJ, check out their geometry, and make something similar. And I did. I really like that frame. It's a dirt jumper. It was definitely a handicap in the BMX track. So after the first year I raced it, I was like, okay, I need a real race cruiser. What do I do? How do I make it feel like that bike but still be edgy like a cruiser?
Right.
And once again, blank slate. I kind of took little pieces of it and thought, how do I make, I don't know, I guess you can say a more slack bike, a little bit more relaxed. And this is what I came up with.
Cool.
And the 243 geometry has never changed. It's always been this from the first one. The first time I threw a leg over it, I was like, wow, this is magic. This bike rides really, really well. And I let everybody else ride it, and they all come back with the same exact reaction. Their smiles ear to ear, and they always say how smooth it is and how easy it is to ride.
That's awesome.
And that's like the two best things. If you just feel good on it automatically, you're gonna go faster.
Right.
If you get on a bike and it doesn't feel right, it's already in your mind. Yeah, it's already in your mind that you're not comfortable on it. So that was the big thing for me, was make a bike that just is easy to ride.
Okay, what are some unique things that you're doing on your frames?
For one, I'm steel, so there's not a lot of steel race bikes out there right now. Probably the aero tube in the rear end is different. You're not going to see that on a lot of bikes. It's expensive tubing per foot to buy. It's a lot more costly than buying round tube. So that's one thing that's different about my bikes. Some of them have the cool internal cable routing that's actually a permanent internal hard line. That's actually like a hydraulic line that's part of the frame. That's something that nobody else is really doing. The standard production models all come with a 44 millimeter head tube, so that, like right now I feel like there's this pivotal point where a tapered fork is becoming really popular.
Oh yes.
A tapered steer tube fork. Well, I want a bike that will take a headset cup, like a traditional press-in cup, but the 44 millimeters beauty is you can run either a straight or tapered. So my frame can take your old fork that you have if you don't want to buy a new one, because it's an investment to build a new bike. And if you have a cool like carbon fork that's sitting around and you want to use it, you could put that in the bike. It doesn't change a whole lot, you know, like it's such a minimal amount of difference that it adds or changes by adding maybe like the 10 millimeters a stack of the lower cup. You're changing bottom bracket height by maybe 1/8 of an inch, which is so minimal. It's like a tire change could make a difference in that. And your head angle, if you raise the bike up a little bit, you're actually like putting the fork farther out. So in a sense, it's changing your effective head angle by changing the stack, but it's like 1/4 of a degree. It's something that is so minimal, I don't think the average person would ever even notice it.
Right.
So that's, to me, that's the beauty of the 44 millimeter head tube, and that's why I like it. I just see this pivotal point right now, and it kind of made sense to do that.
Well, there's that, and disc is going to be the next big thing.
It
already is.
It is, yeah. I'm working on something right now that I can have an easier, like, add-on option for a disc brake mount. This bike, I put a flat mount caliper on it, and it's really tricky. There was so much engineering that went into making it work right, and it was a prototype, so there was a lot of design, you know, fiddling with things and trying to make it really right. So I think for production application, it would be just more sensical, like more cost effective, I would say, to just do an ISO adapter. They're easier to work on. It's not tucked in quite as nice, but it's just more practical in my opinion.
Right, cool. I'm just trying to think what else on this.
Integrated chain tensioners, and you have your dropouts that can take any different size axle. The other cool thing is the integrated seat clamp that nobody has. That's totally my design, and I get a lot of compliments on it that it's just super slick, and like they're like, wow, you know, everybody says, wow, I've never seen anything like that. It's just so clean. It's lots of little things, figuring stuff out and slowly making tweaks. Some of the early production bikes, I didn't have some stuff figured out how I wanted to like crimp this smoother, and finally I made some, you know, some custom tooling to make it a lot more slick.
Right. Hey everyone, future editor here. As is tradition, something had to go wrong at some point, and I think I either ran out of battery or ran out of memory at this stage, possibly both. So from here on out, the rest of the video is going to look like this. Top content, as always. Obviously, you make a lot of these custom. Do you only do custom sizes? Do you have a standard product line?
At this point, yeah, now I have a full portfolio. I have like 14 frame sizes from mini to triple XL in 20-inch bikes. I have 3 cruisers. I have 1 street frame that's really limited production. That one I kind of had to temporarily suspend production because the tubing that I use on that particular bike is currently unavailable. Gotcha. Okay. So that bike might go away unless I find something else that I could use that would be equivalent. I don't want to sacrifice any strength for inferior tubing, you know? So that's really what it comes down to.
Maybe briefly also talk, you've got the custom fork going on in the front?
Yeah, I made a custom fork to match the bike. It's currently only available in a through axle, 20 millimeter through axle with a tapered steerer. There's 2 sizes I make right now, a cruiser and an OS 20 fork. I have made 1 20-inch fork, but because the leg is so short, and there's still 32 millimeters of offset, it looks really raked out, like it looks really chopper-esque.
Right.
Because you're still trying to get to 32 millimeters of offset and in such a short distance.
Right, because you've got, it looks like it's 0 offset, but it's not.
Offset, but it's all in the crown, so it's kind of an optical illusion.
Right.
The longer the leg, the less it seems like visible when you're looking at it. where you make the leg shorter and shorter and shorter, then you're trying to like really pitch that thing out there.
Is there a reason for having it designed like that and just not having a regular dropout at the bottom?
Just to be different.
Okay.
Just so I could use the aero tube. I thought it was really clean to miter that straight on and give me the through axle. It looks so simple and so clean. There's just nothing out there like it. It honestly reminds me of a road bike fork, and I'm really big into that carbon aero road look.
Right.
So there's definitely some inspiration from that.
Cool. So we're filming this at the end of 2021. How did your year go in terms of production for 2021? And then talk about what do you have planned for next year and beyond?
So this year has been great. This was really the blow up year, I think, for me. I got a ton of frames out. Everybody really recognizes it as a brand at this point, and they're like, wow, they're everywhere. So that's a really good feeling. I'm expanding to the West Coast. I have a couple orders right now that are gonna go to Nevada and Colorado, and they were just randos. They were just people that messaged me. They're like, man, I saw your bike on sugarcane. That thing is so cool. How do I get one? I was like, well, you just started the process, so I'm gonna send you an invoice. Send me your email, I'll send you an invoice, you pay it, and you're on the list.
Cool.
Yeah.
So wrap this up. Talk about where we can find you, all your socials, websites, whatever you got.
No website yet. If you check me out on iamcook.bicycles on Instagram or Facebook, you can see my page, see what I make, send me a message if you're interested. Yeah, and then we go from there.
Awesome. Cool. Tony, thank you so much for doing this again.
Man, thank you, buddy.
Hope
great year riding with you.
Thank you.
Next year, hopefully we race more.
Fingers crossed, and hope all this recorded.
All right, awesome. If not, we'll do it again. We'll try for 3.
God, maybe. I hope that's not the case.